Giami, Libby, you ready to go?
Yep.
Okay, Libby, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Hello and welcome to NOAA's National Ocean Service Science Seminar Series. My name is Tracy Gill. Today and for all Tuesdays through June 11, I am co-hosting a seminar series with Giami Shrestha, Director of the U.S. Carbon Cycle Science Program Office. Giami will provide information on the background for this series and introduce the seminar and speaker. But before she does, here's a few webinar logistics and related information. The presenter today is fine with clarifying questions during the seminar. Feel free to type them into the chat box and she will get to them when she can. And if you are interested in getting a PDF copy or a recording of today's presentation, Giami will list relevant websites in the chat box where you can find them, as well as links to the SOCCR2 reports. If you are interested in if you are not on the NOAA Science Seminar list and you'd like to be, go ahead and email me at tracy.gill@noaa.gov and I will be happy to add you to the list. And now I will turn it over to Giami Shrestha to introduce the seminar title and speaker. Giami?
Thank you, Tracy. Greetings, everyone. I am Giami Shrestha, the Director of the U.S. Carbon Cycle Science Program Office and co-host of this webinar series today with Tracy Gill from NOAA. Today's webinar is the 12th in a 16-week seminar series titled From Science to Solutions, the State of the Carbon Cycle, which is focused on communicating the second state of the carbon cycle report findings in relation to current and broader societal impacts and solutions. We also include participants from our different science communities in this seminar series. So really, anybody who's interested and who works in this field is welcome to participate in this seminar. This series is sponsored by the U.S. Carbon Cycle Science Program in partnership with NOAA. For those who don't know about the U.S. Carbon Cycle Science Program, we are an interagency partnership led by the Carbon Cycle Interagency Working Group. We coordinate and facilitate federally funded carbon cycle research with the science community, and we provide leadership to the U.S. Global Change Research Program on carbon cycle science priorities. We are one of the longest-running U.S. interagency partnerships in global change research. Most recently, we led the development of the second state of the carbon cycle report with a diverse team of over 200 U.S. and international experts for over 3 years. This decadal assessment underwent rigorous multi-draft peer review by the U.S. National Academy of Sciences, the public, and 13 federal agencies and departments before its release in late 2018. Last month, on the occasion of Earth Day, we released a new metadata embedded website for this assessment. The site is carbon2018.globalchange.gov. Please check it out. On behalf of my colleagues, I would like to express our deep gratitude to NOAA and Tracy Gill, as well as all webinar speakers for making this webinar series possible. For your future reference, the recording of our prior webinars in this series are available on the YouTube channel of the U.S. Carbon Cycle Science Program. All pertinent slides and details of the webinar series are available on the program website carboncyclescience.us. You can look for the news and announcements page or also do a search to look for this webinar details page. So today, Dr. Libby Larson is our speaker. Thank you, Libby. Her presentation is focused on scientific community engagement for carbon cycle researchers. Here is a background, is the bio that Libby provided to us. Dr. Libby Larson started working for NASA as a AAAS Science and Technology Fellow in 2012. After her fellowship ended, she was hired by the NASA Carbon Cycle and Ecosystems Office to continue her work in coordinating the North American Carbon Program, supporting the Arctic Boreal Vulnerability Experiment field campaign, and representing NASA in the U.S. Global Change Research Program. In addition to serving on the Carbon Cycle Interagency Working Group, she also co-chairs the Social Sciences Steering Committee. Dr. Larson is an urban ecologist by training and was a contributing author to the Built Environment, Urban Systems and Cities chapter of the 2018 National Climate Assessment. I have known Libby for many years now, and I can truly say she's been a great member of this Carbon Cycle Interagency Working Group and broader U.S. Carbon Program science community. So we're fortunate to have her on the team. With that, welcome, Libby, and please start your presentation.
Thank you very much, Gami, for that introduction. I hope that everybody can hear me okay. Yes, so as Gami said, my name is Libby Larson, and I work in the Carbon Cycle and Ecosystems Office at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, and I am also the coordinator for the North American Carbon Program. So I wanted to sort of frame, Gami had asked me to talk about some of the work that our office does and that I do specifically with NACP. And I thought that a useful way to frame it was to think about it in terms of scientific community engagement. And this particular term was brought to my attention at the most recent AGU when there was actually a poster session that talked about this, and there is a new AAAS Center for Scientific Collaboration and Community Engagement. I've included the link for that here on this page that I'm pretty excited about and has been thinking about formally what this means and how community engagement managers can think about their work and engage with each other and engage with the community. And specifically, excuse me, they define scientific community engagement as engagement that is happening with the members of a community of practice or an organization, rather than thinking about engagement with the public. Of course, engagement with the public is important in its own right, but there are several things that that scientific engagement within a community can be valuable for, including creating a shared sense of belonging and self-identification for the members of that community, facilitating the exchange of scientific information and other types of products, and helping with the accomplishment of specific project goals. This is a this is a graphic that our office has developed to help illustrate all of the ways that that we do these types of activities. The Carbon Cycle and Ecosystems Office at NASA Goddard is a support office for the Carbon Cycle and Ecosystems focus area at NASA headquarters. And this includes several programs, including ocean biology and biochemistry, and biogeochemistry, ecological forecasting, terrestrial ecology, water resources, biological diversity, and land cover and land use change. And specifically for this talk, I wanted to focus in on these gears in this figure of the activities that our office does, including logistics, high-performance computing, and data management activities. Perhaps the most obvious and current example of the logistics that we offer to our scientific community is field campaign support for the Arctic Boreal Vulnerability Experiment, or ABOVE. ABOVE is a field campaign coming out of the NASA Terrestrial Ecology program, and we support all of the researchers in project teams and all jointly together in logistics and field support, including having field offices in Fairbanks, Alaska, and Yellowknife of Northwest Territory. We have extensive hazards and safety training. We assist with trip planning, including information on insurance, etc. and we assist with permit applications. Another thing that we offer to above researchers is high-performance computing. So as a partner with the NASA Center for Climate Simulation, we have a science cloud that allows for computational and data resources to be available to the team. It enables access to large common data sets. So for example, many Landsat scenes are already existing in the above science cloud, enabling researchers to access and process that data quickly, and also provides a collaborative environment by which results can quickly and easily be shared among the above research community. It also, excuse me, because there's computing capabilities on the cloud, it allows for faster and more powerful processing than typically available on computer workstations, and also allows us to establish computational and data management protocols that we can implement across all of the projects uniformly. In addition to the Science Cloud, we have a very strong commitment to thinking about data management. And here is an example of the data management cycle, that the data life cycle that we have adapted to specifically think about the work that our office does. But we are committed to following the data all the way from the planning stage and collection through the parts that the individual PI may be feeling most responsible for in terms of collection, QA, QC, analysis, and description. But also really reinforcing that that data needs to be published in an archive to allow it to be discoverable and integrated with other data and analyzed by other researchers outside of the original project team. We have commitments to support this data management, not just for above researchers, but also for other projects that we manage that are NASA specific, such as the carbon monitoring system, which I will talk about in a moment. But we do have some support for shepherding data like this also through the for participants in the North American Carbon Program. I wanted to highlight for the projects that NASA specifically funds that, of course, there have been many contributions for these large field campaigns and project activities to SOCCR2. Above didn't really get underway in terms of official funding until about 2013 and 14. So there aren't as many above specific contributions to SOCCR2 because of the limit on the publication dates for SOCCR2. But I did find some references from some early above work that were cited in the Arctic chapter of SOCCR2. As I mentioned earlier, another program that we support is a carbon monitoring system, or CMS. CMS is a congressionally directed activity that NASA engages in, where we solicit proposals from the community for prototyping a monitoring and verification system for carbon in the United States. And our office provides a lot of support to the CMS PIs and the team together. And part of what we do is we help design and implement science team meetings. As similar as I already mentioned, we do a lot of data management support. And in addition, we help facilitate various thematic working groups. So here on the right I just have a screenshot of some of the current and past CMS working groups. And I apologize, I should have put the website for CMS on the slide. Perhaps we can correct it before we publish it for distribution. But the website is carbon.nasa.gov. And so you can see, for example, that there are across the science team working groups that are focused on atmospheric validation, data and management, external communications, methane, MRV, and uncertainties in algorithm assessment and intercomparisons. CMS has numerous publications. I focused on, rather than trying to weed all the way through SOCCR2 for all of the particular presentations, publications that were relevant. On all of our websites that we maintain for these programs, we list all of the publications that are associated with each of these programs, and also include a link to highly cited publications from each program. So those are publications that have more than 100 citations. And these examples here are papers that were published by CMS researchers as part of CMS that were cited more than 100 times, and how these various publications can be found as important citations in SOCCR2 as well. Okay, so finally, I want to talk about the North American Carbon Program, or NACP. So up until this moment, I have been focusing on projects that are NASA specific. That is, the teams that we have are all teams that are funded by NASA to work on the particular field campaigns or programs, such as CMS or above. North American Carbon Program, on the other hand, is a multi-agency, multidisciplinary research program that focuses on carbon sources and sinks in North America and adjacent oceans. And it has projects and participants that are funded by a whole range of different agencies, including NASA and DOE and USDA and NOAA, and I won't remember to list all of them right at this moment, so I won't attempt to do so, but I believe that there is a later slide that talks about all of the participating agencies. NACP has been around since its initial inception in 2002 and has had several different community-led activities during the years that that have been very important for contributing to the science that made SOCCR2 successful. And these include intensive campaigns, synthesis activities, and workshops that we have done collaboratively with the Carbon Cycle Interagency Working Group. Again, since its inception, we have 227 publications with 100+ citations, and we currently have over 150 active projects associated with the North American Carbon Program. One intensive program that was, I think, very important for contributing to the success of SOCCR2 was the Mid-Continent Intensive, or MCI. It was a test bed for methodologies to determine carbon flux between land and atmosphere, and as you can see here, focused on the Midwest in this particular region on the map on the right. And it was really essential for beginning to tackle understanding and reconciling differences between top-down versus bottom-up estimates of carbon flux. And projects within the MCI received funding from DOE, NASA, NOAA, NSF, USDA, Agricultural Research Service, USDA Forest Service, and the USGS. There have also been numerous syntheses that have come out of NACP, Most recently was the coastal carbon synthesis, which we did in collaboration with OCB. And the figure here, for example, that I have shown is tackling especially lateral transfers of carbon between coastal areas of coastal waters. That was a very important publication to come out of this synthesis project. In addition to SOCCR2, that's the coastal carbon synthesis, and another synthesis project is the Multi-Scale Synthesis and Terrestrial Model Intercomparison Project, or MISTY-MIP. There have also been regional and continental syntheses, site-level syntheses, and disturbance syntheses. And GAMI has just posted in the chat the NACP website that has information where you can link to all of these particular topics and find out more information about the projects that were undertaken and the publications that were the result of these different syntheses activities. All of this work has, I think, as I mentioned before, made significant contribution to the success of SOCCR2. And I wanted to include this figure. I think this probably highlights one of the most important aspects of that. This figure is from Chapter 2 of the carbon cycle, and it is a comparison of various estimates of the land carbon uptake from the atmosphere across years up until SOCCR2 itself. So you can see the left hand, the most value is the inventory that was created for SOCCR1 in 2007. And the most right-hand one is the inventory that was completed for this SOCCR2. And in between are some other inventories that have been done by various programs. And you can see that there are 3 here that are listed as being NACP inventories. And one of the things that's very important is, and that is highlighted in the chapter for SOCCR2, is that all of this work through the years has allowed for convergence between top-down and bottom-up estimates and narrowing of the uncertainty range around the estimated value for that net uptake. And without the work of NACP, I think coming up with these estimates and the methodologies that even lend themselves to creating the inventories would be much more difficult today. Here are, again, some publications that were highlighted that are NACP publications. I'm sure I did not catch all of them. As I said, we have a very large database on the NACP website of all of the associated publications from NACP projects. But I also wanted to highlight another very important contribution that NACP has made that is specifically actually called out in Chapter 18 of the SOCCR2 that is focused on carbon cycle science in support of decision making. And the authors of this chapter note that the NACP is an example of a boundary program that is supporting the scientists' efforts to engage in social, economic, and policy relevant research to improve how carbon cycle science is conducted and ensure policy relevant findings. And before I read the rest of this quote, I want to say that that support of scientist efforts, in addition to facilitating conversations among the participating scientists themselves, and something that I haven't talked about in the other work that our office has done, but that has been very important, is helping various programs and specific researchers engage with appropriate stakeholders for the work that they do. or even, to start off with, identifying appropriate stakeholders for the work that they do. Because of the work of NACP over the years, the community as a whole that studies carbon cycle science has been able to significantly expand its research on human and social impacts of the carbon cycle, contributing to a better understanding of how human and physical processes interact with one another. And you can see this in the expansions that have happened, the differences between SOCCR2 and SOCCR1, that in SOCCR2, every chapter has a section that is focused on the human dimensions of that particular chapter. There is this chapter 18 on decision support that there was one in SOCCR1, but this one in SOCCR2 is significantly improved, I think. And then also for the first time in SOCCR2, there is a whole chapter that, excuse me, is devoted to the social science of the carbon cycle and understanding how different types of social sciences can contribute to our understanding of the human dimensions of the carbon cycle. And I believe that that is chapter 6, but I don't have the reference for that immediately. Perhaps Gammy can post that. A big way in which the efforts and activities and interests of the NACP are determined is through the Science Leadership Group, or SLG. And here I have listed the current members of the SLG, which is co-chaired by Andy Fox and Chris Williams. And these members have been selected by other members of the SLG and with input from the Carbon Cycle Interagency Working Group. And we try to create a group that has diverse perspectives from all of the different sort of carbon cycle subdisciplines that contribute to understanding the sources and sinks of carbon in North America and its adjacent waters. So we have both land and ocean scientists, folks participating in this group. And we are now meeting in person once a year. The next meeting is happening June 5th and 6th for 1.5 days. We are also meeting via phone quarterly for much shorter meetings to keep up with topics and business for the group. And I want to emphasize that that participation for these meetings is open to everyone. If you are interested, we don't have an agenda just yet. We're working on that for this upcoming meeting. If you are interested in participating, there will be an option to call in, and you can contact me. And I will be sure to include you in the invitation with the specific dial-in information for this meeting. And if you can't participate, but you know someone on this group and you have particular concerns or interests or topics that you think that this group should be paying attention to, then please feel free to reach out to them or to myself or to Gammy. This group meets in collaboration with members of the Carbon Cycle Interagency Working Group, and is a way to just try to be sure that we are continuing to be forward-thinking in the important science topics for the NACP looking forward. Another big task that is currently underway for NACP is thinking about the future of NACP. So there was an implementation plan that was produced in 2005 that laid out in that plan some very specific ideas for what carbon cycle science needed to focus on in order to accomplish the particular science goals. And we felt that it was time to update that plan, that there had been significant advances in our understanding of the carbon cycle and also advances in the methodologies and technologies available to us to even take measurements and model the carbon cycle. And so a new implementation plan is in the works. It is based on the science questions that were laid out in the U.S. Carbon Cycle Science Plan, which can be found both on the NACP website and on the U.S. Carbon Cycle Science website. And there are some writing team leads that are in charge of making this happen. I've listed them here. They are in charge of specific sections of the plan. So the main sections that are being developed are very similar to the sections that were in the implementation plan from 2005, but are much more improved, in my opinion, from that earlier version and incorporate all of the changes in understanding that we have learned since then. And so the sections include sustained and expanded observations, that's being led by Arlen Andrews. Assessment and integration, being led by Eric Sundquist. Processes and attributions, being led by Chris Williams. Prediction, being led by Ken Davis, and communication and decision support, being led by Molly Brown. If you're interested in contributing to the writing effort, these different sections are still in draft, and each of the writing subsection team leads is looking for contributions. So please feel free to reach out to those individuals or to me, and I can put you in touch with the appropriate folks for being part of this important forward-looking future plan for research for North American Carbon Program. I also want to highlight that in March 2020, we are going to be having our 7th Open Science meeting. In prior years, this has been called different types of things. Like it started off, I think, being called All Investigators Meeting, and then for various logistical reasons had to be changed to be called Principal Investigators Meeting. And for a while, we also did a joint meeting with the Mariflux, and we were having these meetings every 2 or 3 years. And this year, we wanted to acknowledge, or for this upcoming meeting, we wanted to acknowledge that this is the 7th in all of the NACP meetings, but we also really wanted to encourage participation from the broader community. And so we decided that we should call it an open science meeting. And anyone who is interested in and conducting research or interested in the research outcomes of carbon cycling in North America is invited to participate. It will be happening at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia, which is just outside of DC. And there is a planning committee that is in the process now of putting together an agenda and considering who invitees should be for this meeting. And they are also still open to new participants. So if you would like to volunteer for this committee, please feel free to contact me. And the overarching theme for the meeting, we just decided this just last week, is the future is here, North American carbon science for a changed climate. I'm very excited about this. I think it will be a really wonderful opportunity for the community to come together and talk about all of the amazing work that's been going on, but also do some thinking about future work and have opportunities to learn about connections with stakeholders and science communication, etc. To wrap things up, I just thought that it would be interesting to think a little bit about the ways in which scientific community engagement can provide support for future carbon cycle research. I think that I'm guessing that most of the participants on this call are researchers, but if you are not, and still, I think that we could get some valuable information and have some conversation about what are the types of important future research questions and how can we support the scientific community in tackling those questions, what kinds of activities and ideas do they need. And all of this, I think, can be really influential for thinking about what will the next SOCCR look like. And this is I think, an interesting and kind of difficult question to think about. We, on the Carbon Cycle Interagency Working Group, want to acknowledge that SOCCR is, the 2 times that we have done it, has been a gigantic endeavor to have the participants of the research community volunteer their time and effort to make SOCCR happen. And so we've only been able to do it, once every 10 years, so twice. And we've talked about, well, do we just do another one in 10 years that requires such significant effort, or is there something more focused that we can do at shorter intervals? And I want to note that this is also part of a question that the U.S. Global Change Research Program is attempting to tackle as well when they're thinking about the National Climate Assessment and how to do sustained assessment that will make the effort and work for the required every 4 years National Climate Assessment not so onerous. And both SOCCRs have been contributions to the national climate assessments that were coming out around those time, and that are products of the assessment. And so the way that we decide to tackle this can have important implications and contributions for the next national climate assessment as well. And also, I think this is something that's not new, but the scientific community has been engaging more and more in terms of thinking about how can we meet stakeholder needs. And I would like to open it up to conversation for anyone who has ideas or specific questions. If you have questions about NASA-specific programs, I can answer those as well.
Thanks, Libby.
Thank you.
Libby, if you could put those questions back up, I think that might be helpful. Great, thanks. Folks, if you have any comments or questions or suggestions to Libby's answers, please go ahead and type them into the chat. Libby, to start things off, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tracy.
No, you first, Yami.
I wanted to say, while folks are thinking and typing their questions, I forgot to mention earlier while reading Libby's bio that Libby served on the federal steering and federal liaison team for the second state of the Carbon Cycle Science Report, which was an integral member, also reviewing multiple chapters and contributing to multiple chapters across this decadal assessment. So that's why she knows a lot about the assessment. Thank you, Libby.
Okay, I'll go ahead and ask my question. This is Tracy, and it may have been mentioned in one of the other earlier seminars, but I don't recall. I know it's a huge task to look at North America, but are we doing any international exchange of informations or lessons learned to work with our colleagues around the world who are also, facing this problem? Do you have any thoughts on that, Libby or Gyami?
About international interactions?
Are we sharing lessons learned? Are we working to help each other in other other locations that are not in North America to kind of, share lessons learned, because this is a global problem, and I'm just curious as to how we're interacting with other, people.
Right. Gammy can probably talk about this a little bit too. One of the things that I didn't mention, but I think has been mentioned in prior seminars, is that SOCCR2 was done in collaboration with Canadian and Mexican colleagues, and that was very important. And that my understanding is that the the Mexican community is soon going to be producing a similar document for Mexico and evaluating Mexican carbon sinks and sources. And,
Libby, we cannot hear you.
One of the things that we have had
Hello?
in the past.
Libby? Okay,
can you hear me
people
now?
hear me?
Can you hear
Hello?
me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
Go ahead, Libby. Sorry, Gyami.
Okay. That's okay. So there's been some international agreement with, international work in between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, and there is a Carbo-NA, which is a trilateral effort that has been going on. It's been in a little bit of a hiatus recently, but really trying to work at high levels to coordinate research efforts among the three nations. Then in terms of outside of North America, so it was really important to us in SOCCR2 to situate North America in the context of the global carbon cycle. And I know that Gammy especially has had a lot of participation in the global carbon program, and perhaps Gammy, you could talk a little bit about your work in that area.
Sure. And I think Libby said very well, and I think there was a bit of a bandwidth issue, so we could not hear Libby for a few seconds. But I will repeat something that Libby mentioned about the Mexican carbon program. They were close collaborators and part of the team for the second State of the Carbon Cycle report, which had more of a North American context, but also considering the global science. The Mexican carbon program recently released their own national first State of the Carbon Cycle report for Mexico only. They released that as a draft for public review. And I will post a link here if you want more information on that. This was only a first draft. The review period for that Mexican report has closed, but I believe there might be another opportunity in the future to contribute. So this is sort of an example of how we've been working with collaborators in other countries through this assessment to help them and also help ourselves in the process, because everybody's been integral in the process of developing not only these assessments but also in the overall science internationally. We're also very closely involved with the Global Carbon Project. In fact, if you tuned in a few weeks ago, Ben Poulter from NASA Goddard spoke about a new regional assessment called RECAP2 that will be utilizing many of the SOCCR2 or State of the Carbon Cycle report findings, and there will be some overlapping authorship. The first RECAP 1, was completed in 2015, and it included 14 regional carbon budgets globally, 10 terrestrial regions: Africa, Arctic tundra, Australia, Europe, Russia, East Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Central and South America, and North America. Also 4 ocean regions, Atlantic and Arctic, Indian, Pacific, and Southern Ocean, as well as 8 global syntheses supported the regional budgets and their integration into the global picture via this first global regional assessment of carbon that was finalized in 2015. So, and this also utilized much of the first SOCCR findings, and the other way, we utilized much of this recap 1 assessment to feed into the second state of the carbon cycle report also. So Tracy, I don't know if this answers your question, but just an example.
No, it does. It does.
Yeah.
I was thinking about like Australia and places far away, but I think there's only so much bandwidth you can handle when you're trying to just look at your own continent, Don't you think?
Yeah, but I would say, science, it has no borders, and I think nowadays, everybody, there's so much collaboration and so much sharing of ideas among all scientists, and there are many efforts that are happening globally and continent. And actually, I was going to say we have at least one scientist from Australia who was a chapter lead in SOCCR2.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. So there has been some contribution from that continent.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. Difficult question. So if there's no other question, I just wanted to know, Libby, to your first question, is there an email list for carbon cycle research where researchers can share publications, discussion, conferences, etc.? Or maybe Gyami knows.
So I forgot a couple of things. Thank you for that prompt. One is that we do have a Twitter feed for NACP Carbon that is basically NACP_carbon. And so if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can keep up with us that way. We also have a monthly newsletter to the NACP community, and if you're interested in receiving that, you can send me an email as well. And we do accept contributions from the community about activities that they want to advertise, or different new publications, or even jobs that they are posting and looking to get filled. So please feel free to forward that information as well to us. And we post it on the NACP website, and we post it to Twitter, and it goes out on the newsletter as well. And then I think Gyami might have her own newsletter. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, so Libby, the Carbon Cycle Science program does not have a newsletter. We do have an email list that folks can sign up for, and I periodically send out emails, for instance, for this webinar series. If folks want to sign up, they can go to carboncyclescience.us, scroll down, and go to subscribe to Carbon News, which I'm actually... How about this? I'm gonna paste the link here. You can sign up on this Google group, and we're also on Twitter, which is at US Carbon Program on Twitter, and we're on Facebook and LinkedIn, and yeah, you can follow us there.
Great, thanks. Folks on the web, any questions, any comments? Well, Libby, thank you so much for a terrific presentation. And Gyami, thank you. And folks online, if you have any questions, you can email Libby or Gyami, and they'll be happy to answer your questions. The PDF and the recording will be posted in a few days by Libby, both on YouTube and on the SOCCR2 website. Libby and Gyami, any last comments, questions?
I just want to give thanks to... Sorry, I just wanted to really express thanks to the people in the carbon cycle science community who are really what make NACP and the other programs that individual agencies run and the U.S. Carbon Cycle Science Program in general successful. And without you, we really couldn't have had this the success of SOCCR2 and all of the things that are associated with it.
Yes.
Thanks, Libby. I would echo what Libby just said. Really, it's really the science community in the U.S., in North America, globally, who makes all this possible. So, and again, and also the agencies and all the funders. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Bye-bye.